Does age bring wisdom? Look at some old people around you and you may get the answer. Oldest doesn't always mean wisest. Just like the United States of America, it's the oldest democracy in the world. It's like that old man who keeps advising everyone else. But what about his own affairs? Let's put American democracy under the scanner. Let's ask that uncomfortable question. Is the US a backsliding democracy? And today is a perfect day for this conversation because yesterday the US Supreme Court gave a historic verdict. It struck down affirmative action in colleges. Now, what does that mean? What is affirmative action? It is used to give greater opportunities to certain groups. The criteria can be different. It can be gender, race, even religion. In most cases, it takes the form of quotas, reservation. Suppose a community or group has been historically underrepresented. They will get quotas for jobs and education. This is affirmative action in a nutshell. In India, it is done on the basis of caste and religion. In the US, it was done on the basis of race. Since the 1960s, colleges had quotas for African Americans. The idea was to increase diversity. But recently, there has been a backlash. The argument is that quotas violate the principle of equality. So the matter reached the Supreme Court. 6 judges voted to strike down affirmative action. 3 judges voted against. Needless to say, there is a lot of criticism. President Joe Biden says he's severely disappointed.
You know, I know today's court decision is a severe disappointment to so many people, including me. But we cannot let the decision be a permanent setback for the country. We need to keep an open door of opportunities.
President Biden, the Congressional Black Caucus said the Supreme Court has thrown into question its own legitimacy. Is this a rogue court?
This is not a normal court.
His Republican rival is happy, though. Donald Trump says it's a great day for America. Tells us how divided this country is. One group says this verdict will lead to segregation, that only rich white people will attend these colleges. The other side says about time.
When I heard Judge Scalia suggest that maybe blacks do better at schools that are not as fast as UT, I didn't know if I was in the courtroom at the United States Supreme Court or at a Donald Trump rally.
You cannot cure racial discrimination that occurred in the past with new discrimination today. Race and ethnicity have no place in American life and law.
Now, there are 2 parts to this story. One is obviously the quota system. The second is the backsliding of the US democracy. Let's briefly dwell on the first one. It's a debate that keeps popping up in India as well. We have reservation based on caste and religion in India, and every now and then there are calls to abolish this system. But for the moment, we'll focus on the US. They began affirmative action in the 1960s. Have things improved since then? Let's look at the numbers. Here's a study from 2017. It found that around 9% of freshmen at Ivy League colleges were black. Now, Ivy League is a group of top American colleges. Only 9% of their new admissions were black in 2017. At the same time, black people made up 15% of college-age American population. So the gap is around 6 points. And what was this gap in 1980? The same. So what has 50 years of affirmative action produced? I'm sure there are individual success stories and more power to them. But on a larger level, there is no improvement. Now, I know what some people would say. Doesn't that mean we should continue with the system until there is change? Well, look at the other side. It hasn't delivered in 50 years. Why would it deliver in the next 50? And I'm not saying that scrapping quotas overnight was right. I'm saying a rethink was needed. The US Supreme Court had political reasons for doing so. After all, it is a conservative court. But beyond that, there is a need to ask these questions. In the US, in India, everywhere, do quotas really help? Think about it. Now to the second part of our story. What is happening to US democracy? This court ruling should not be seen in isolation. Think of what's been happening in the last 6 or 7 years. First, they banned tourists from Muslim countries, classic Islamophobia. Then they separated children from migrant families at the border. Even dictators would flinch. In 2021, the crowning achievement, one of the most botched up transfers of power in democratic history anywhere in the world. I'm sure you remember these pictures. Thousands of people stormed the US Capitol. They desecrated both chambers of Congress. They wanted to reinstate Donald Trump as president, even though he lost the election. That did not stop them. Then last year, There was another jolt. The Supreme Court struck down abortion rights. In one blow, women lost control of their bodies. Only 3 countries have curbed abortion since the 1990s, and the United States of America is one of them. And don't think this is a domestic industry. Washington also exports democratic backsliding. The best example is Afghanistan. America's messed up withdrawal brought the Taliban back to power. The people lost democracy. The women lost their freedoms. If this isn't a backsliding democracy, then what is? Hate crimes are up 12%. Former presidents are being charged with crimes. The sitting president's son is pleading guilty to tax evasion, yet America doesn't care. They still call themselves the beacon of democracy. And I know what some people will say. Take Donald Trump out and half the problems disappear. Perhaps it's true. But Donald Trump is not some anomaly. Donald Trump is a product of America's faulty democracy. So Washington cannot hide behind the Democrats versus Republicans argument. It cannot blame Donald Trump for everything. It must admit that there is something rotten at the core. Do Biden and company have the guts to do that? To acknowledge that America is indeed a backsliding democracy? Well, from recent experience, I don't think so.